Hello, everyone, and welcome to the pre-show for today's Coffee and Real Estate Live Chat. I am just making sure everything is good to go. It looks like we're ready to rock and roll on Facebook, but we haven't gone live there. But we go automatically live on YouTube and a few other places. So let me just quickly check and see if we are there. Yes, we are. So nice. Glad to see things actually working. It's always nice to have the technology actually work for you. Let's try LinkedIn, and then we'll check YouTube. Or not YouTube, we'll check Twitter. For those of you who live in my local area here, I hope you've survived the rains. For those of you who've been with me for a while, you know the background behind me changed on my videos. Well, that's because the room I use for my office actually flooded during the rains. So I had to, and unfortunately, of course, all of my office related stuff was up against that wall. So I needed to get everything away from that wall, pull up the carpet, make sure things started getting wet. So now we're getting folks out here to do a French drain on that side of the house, and that's going to be fun since it's going to involve digging down about 6 feet. My house is on a hill, so my bottom floor is sort of wedged into the hill, so that makes it a little bit more complicated. Let's check out Twitter. Yep, there we go. It looks like we're going. It looks like we're going everywhere. Very nice. And for whatever reason, I do Twitch as well. Someone suggested I stream to Twitch, but I realize that's mostly for games. So I realize that's not going to be a place where folks who are interested in real estate are going to necessarily be too interested. Here we are with 10 minutes to go till we actually start the official show. I want to thank everyone who joins in for the live stream, and I realize I get an awful lot of folks who apparently look at the live stream afterwards on one of the many platforms where it becomes available. Facebook is sort of the home of the live stream, but as I said, it's also available on these other platforms, and I get folks who watch it on YouTube. YouTube is maybe even the primary place where folks tend to consume the replay of the show, but I appreciate the feedback that I get from folks who watch the show. I'd love if more of you could do it live, because I'd love for the questions to get answered during the show so that everyone can benefit from the answers and so that we can explore the ideas together, that kind of thing. I'm going to go ahead and go live on Facebook since we're 10 minutes away. And there we go. We are now live on Facebook. Whoa, wait a minute. Whoops. Uh-oh. I think I just screwed it up. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You know what? I think it went live automatically. I had thought I had to select the button, and I believe I've now screwed it up. So, it's telling me that live video has ended. So I'm gonna go to. Wow. You know what? How did I manage to do that? Ugh. I cannot believe I did that. What a bonehead play. Well, how do I fix that? Goodness, how did I... Everything was going so well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and... first, let me make sure that it's... going... Man, you know, I every once in a while you do something so dumb. Let me try to recover from this error. Wow. Unbelievable. All right. So now we'll be live on Facebook. I cannot believe that just happened. Let me go into Facebook real quick and comment on that failed attempt so folks know where to go. Jeez. Every once in a while you do something really dumb and you broadcast it to the universe. So there you go. Let's see here. Yes, all 8 minutes and 52 seconds. Holy moly. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And there doesn't seem to be a way for me to get back to the original. Oh, wait, no, that's this. Well, maybe it's... I don't know. Jeez. Well, okay. All right. I'm gonna hope for the best. We've got just a few more minutes now till things get started. What a way to start things off. Holy mackerel. All right. Welcome to it, folks. We've got 4 minutes to go until we're going to jump into the meat of it today. We've got some interesting articles to cover, some great local stuff for Gilroy, Morgan Hill, San Jose, and some general news items for the whole, well, really the whole country that could affect you directly. Particularly a couple of interesting things relating to tax forfeitures and losing your property that way. Chat is up, so if you are on, I think just about anything, you'll be able to comment. Some of them don't go through So usually, I think the two easiest places to do this are YouTube and Facebook. LinkedIn is apparently read-only, so just so you're aware that I can't respond to you if you're watching on LinkedIn. You know, it may be okay. I may not have completely screwed this up, so hopefully we're good. I'm gonna proceed. It is actually streaming on Facebook, so I think we're good. All right. So belly up to the bar. Have yourself a coffee. I hope you've got your favorite brew with you this morning. As I say, we start at 10 a.m., so I hold off on sharing all the really important, juicy stuff until we actually get started for folks who want to watch live. You know, I used to do Facebook where I would tell it what time I want to start, and then I would just let it automatically go live. And I turned that option off. I thought, you know what? I want to give the same pre-show stuff that I've been doing on other platforms to the Facebook folks. And I assumed that it would then just wait for me to click the go live button, but I think it went live immediately. I think as soon as I went on there, it went live. So when I clicked the button, it stopped being live, which is, of course, a shame, but hopefully we'll be good. Let me just double check that we're still streaming on Facebook. All right. If you go to the page and just look at video, go to the video tab in the page for White Law Real Estate. You'll see that we are there. And yes, I do see that the old one, okay, and the old one got 14 views. No, that's from 5 weeks ago, so it didn't even, it hasn't even posted the one from a few minutes ago. All right, so hopefully we'll be good. Welcome to it, everyone. It is 10 a.m. It is the third Saturday of the month. So let's jump in and chat a bit. As usual, I am here with my coffee and all the latest data and information relating to our South Valley lives. And I'm hoping you will be able to happily join me on this journey as we explore the wonderful world of real estate and the news that affects us, and in some cases, the nation. We've got some very interesting local stuff. I've got a few other interesting articles. We've got an awful lot of articles we could potentially chat about today. And I've even got a poll. If we get enough folks live this time, I've got a poll that we could run. I'd love to get your input on what you're thinking about the markets right now. And that's kind of what that relates to. If you're interested in searching for a home, if you're interested in finding out the current value of your home, of course, that's something I do. My name's Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors, and a local real estate broker here in Morgan Hill, serving Gilroy, San Martin, Morgan Hill, obviously, and South San Jose. I've been doing this since 1988, so I've been at it for a while. Started off as obviously just a real estate agent and then became a broker and started my own brokerage in the early 2000s. So happy to have you here with me as we have a little coffee and enjoy a little real estate chat. I guess we'll just go ahead and jump in. And see what we can see relating to the latest news. Now, another thing we could chat about is other areas that you're interested in relating to real estate. I know one of the things that I often get for new buyers is what are ways to get into real estate in a way that you're investing. Let's see here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just got an interesting comment that had nothing to do with what we're talking about. As you can see, it did come up on the screen there, so you could all see it. I just deleted it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump in here. and see if we can't get some of these numbers squared away, and see if we can't learn a little something from them. These are the numbers. These are the total homes on market numbers for Santa Clara County, San Jose, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. We can see that last year, and this is last year compared to this year. And the reason why we look at it this way is we want to have all of the seasonal variations counted for, right? We don't want to, because very obviously if we just do month to month, if we're going from summer to winter or spring or whatever we're doing, there's changes, right? So it's valuable to look back over your shoulder and see what's happened over the period of time directly behind you. But if you really want data on changes, it's best to look at the same month from this year and last year. So for December of last year, we had 943 homes on the market. And as I say in my other videos that I do on the markets, think of that as the competition number if you're a seller. Think of it as the choice number if you're a buyer. So this year it's at 517. That is last year it was 517. This year it's 943. So we're up 82% overall in the county. And that's good data, right? That is Santa Clara County. That is lots and lots of sample size. So that is a crazy jump. It's not as crazy as some other areas, but we'll go ahead and get into that. Next is San Jose with a 74% increase. Last year, we had 270 homes on the market, with 469 being the total this year. Morgan Hill, 81% increase, so a little bit more in line with the county average. 26 homes last year, 47 homes this year. And Gilroy saw the largest increase with 28 homes on the market last year and 58 homes on the market this year. And Gilroy continues. We've chatted about this before, and I've actually talked to a few folks in Gilroy. And I think Gilroy represents an interesting opportunity for buyers right now. It's one of the first communities that has sort of gotten it in terms of understanding that the market has changed. Still some folks coming onto the market with some list prices or asking prices that probably aren't really calibrated to what the market's going to do. But we can work with an awful lot of what's going on in Gilroy. So I think it's one of those places that represents a decent opportunity for folks who are looking to buy in their first home or even an investment property. All right, let's go ahead now and take a look at the new listings. Now, these are the homes that were actually listed in the month of December in 2022 versus 2021. And you can see in Santa Clara County overall, we had a 33% decline in the number of folks who decided to put their home on the market. It was 639 homes were added to the market at the same time last year, 428 homes this year. So a substantial decline. And it's also, we're really kind of heading into an interesting time as we get into January, February, and March, right? Because if we go back a year from today, completely different market. But that change started in March, right? Because interest rates started to go up. We started to see that dramatic change in lending rates. And we're going to cover lending rates here at the end of the show as well. So it'll be interesting once we get back into the March of 2023, March, April, May of 2023, and we're comparing to the same sort of challenges in the market that we are facing now that we weren't facing a year ago today. It'll be interesting to see how we compare. And I think obviously I don't think it'll be as dramatic a change in terms of year-to-year comparisons, but we'll still see declines. We'll still see that even now we're having a decline in a lot of these numbers. All right, now, in terms of new listings, we're 34% down in the city of San Jose. That's 360 last year, 237 this year. In Morgan Hill, down 14%. There were 29 homes last year, 25 homes this year that were listed. And in Gilroy, really a wash, right? And when you take into account sample size, right? Because Gilroy is a handful of things happening, much smaller numbers in terms of number of homes on the market, that sort of thing. So a 4% decline is a wash, really. It's the margin of error because of the low sample size is much broader. It's bigger in Gilroy. It's a little bit less in Morgan Hill. It's a little bit less in San Jose, and then it's a lot less in Santa Clara County as we move up with larger sample sizes. Okay. Next, let's take a look at the total number of homes sold in December. We can see that in Santa Clara County, we've had a 49.8, basically a 50% drop in the total number of homes sold. So it was 1,217 homes sold in Santa Clara County last year in December. This year, 668 in December. So half the number of homes getting sold. In San Jose, that number was 606 last year, 372 this year. So that's a 51% drop in the total number of homes sold. In Morgan Hill, we saw a 54% drop. 58 homes were sold last year, 30 homes sold this year in December. And in Gilroy, we saw a 42.6, basically a 43% drop from 45 homes to 19 homes sold. And, as we keep going through this and we keep seeing the number of homes sold versus the number of homes listed, for instance, we sold 19 homes, right, in Gilroy. Well, we listed 58. We listed 24. So we net added 5 homes to the now carrying forward inventory. If we do the same thing for Morgan Hill, the total number of homes sold was 30, but we added 25. So the net was taking 5 total homes off of the inventory for Morgan Hill. If we do the same thing and look at San Jose, 372 homes were sold. 237 homes were listed. So again, we sold more homes than we listed. So we net reduced the inventory, at least in these months. And then in Santa Clara County in general, we sold 668 homes and we listed 428 homes. So again, that is a good number. That indicates cutting into the inventory more, but we already have had so many homes stored up in the inventory that we're still seeing these crazy numbers. And we're starting to see a lot more homes on the market for a lot longer. I was doing an analysis of the homes that have had their prices reduced, and this is something I do in the more detailed market report, but yes, more detailed than this, for the market reports for the specific cities of San Jose, Morgan Hill, Gilroy. Check those out. I'll be releasing those videos on YouTube over the course of the next week. You can also find those at soldbyrobert.com. Where I get into some of the nitty-gritty detail relating to whatever statistic at that time is really playing a big part. So right now, my hot button is of homes that have a reduced price. What was the average price reduction? What was the highest price reduction? What was the lowest price reduction? How many days on market on average do these homes have? And what should you do about that, right? Because I think this is one of the big dynamics in our local markets that deserves the most attention, because it's having a huge effect on whether or not you're getting the results you want as a buyer or a seller in the current marketplace. So you need to be aware of that. And if your agent isn't having conversations with you about why your home hasn't sold and it's been more than 2 weeks and you haven't had an offer, it's time to have conversations. It's time to make things happen. So it's almost a cautionary tale, but it's something I like to try and work through in those more detailed presentations. So check those out either on YouTube at you can check for Rebel Broker on YouTube, or you can go to Sold by Robert. It's always going to be there as well. Okay. Next, average original list price. Now, I do this differently than other agents do. I like to look at the original list price. An original list price is the price that the seller was told they were going to list their home at on day one. So when they signed that listing agreement, this is the price that they agreed the home would get listed for. And why do I do that? Why don't I use the number that it might have ended up after being increased or decreased over the time it was being marketed? Because I want to get a calibration to what sellers' expectations were. How much above or below the realistic market expectation was this seller's expectation? And this gives us an idea of where those sellers' minds are at, right? So overall in the county, sellers believed that their homes were worth 12% more, as we can see right here, 12% more than they were last year. Last year, the average home was listed for $1,561,000. This year, $1,732,000. So then keep that number in mind, and 12% increase from the same time last year, because then we're going to compare this to how much it actually got in sales price. And you're going to see a huge delta here between these two numbers. Meaning, and so why do we care, right? Why do we care? One, I think this is important to know if you're a buyer coming into this, to understand from a negotiation standpoint where you need to start. What are the things you need to start working on at the beginning of the process in order to make some headway and not just have your offer rejected immediately because the seller feels like it's too low, right? A lot of this is art rather than science, although the science needs to play a huge part in terms of just what the numbers are. But understanding this, the calibration of your seller, because those folks, they are the ones whose signature you need if you're going to buy that house. You don't need the real estate agent's signature. You need that seller signature. All right. So next, San Jose. If you lived in San Jose on average, you believed your home was worth 10% more than it was last year. Last year, that number was $1,279,000. This year, that number is $1,439,000. Let's go ahead and have a little coffee here to buffer things. So about a 10% expectation, increase in expectations on the part of sellers, right? Morgan Hill, 20.5 increase in list price. So folks in Morgan Hill really think their home is worth a whole lot more this time around, this December, than last December. And that's kind of been the trend, right? In past months, we've seen that Morgan Hill was, I think last month wasn't it 34% that Morgan Hill expected their home to be worth that much more. And so in Morgan Hill, that meant that last year in December, the average list price was $1,238,000. This year, it's $1,669,000. And again, in a few minutes, we're going to see how much of a disconnect there is between expectations and reality. And then finally, Gilroy, the most calibrated to reality of the communities is Gilroy. Last year, they expected, and excuse me, I'm sorry, I have a plus 1.1%. It's actually minus 1.1%. So $1,013,000 was last year's average list price. This year, it's $981,000 for a net drop of 1.1%. Apologies for the mistake on the plus versus the minus. But again, calibrated to reality. They were expecting below what they got last year, right? So keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and move on and take a look at what homes actually sold for, the average sales price, because these are some crazy numbers and indicate that in some communities, we need an absolute change in mindset, with the exception of one community, Gilroy. All right, so let's take a look at Santa Clara County. It's down 13% in terms of average sales price. Last year, it was $1,739,000. This year, it's $1,507,000. And again, remember, this is a reflection of buyers' responses to additional costs relating to their ability to purchase a home. It's also a reflection of buyers being pushed down into the market so that their bracket that they're searching in terms of homes is now lower. Someone who may have been searching for a $1.8 or more million home a year ago are now looking for a 1.4 or a 1.3, right? Because the shift in demand is happening, we see a reflection of the average sales price going down, which indicates those homes that are at those higher price points are languishing on the market longer. And we can absolutely see from the detailed data that I look at that that's the case. We've been talking about that forever, right? That shouldn't be a shocker to anybody that the upper range of homes are very much suffering. On the upside, though, if you are someone who is still ready to purchase at that higher price point, you can be very aggressive in there. You can get some very good discounts on homes at that price point because you just don't have any competition. Folks at that price point are very thin on the ground. So you have an ability to potentially get a great deal on a property that's more at the luxury end. All right, San Jose, how disconnected from reality were things this year? $1,355,000 was the average sales price last year. This year, $1,222,000 for a drop of 10%. So the actual sales price was down 10%. And let's remind ourselves that in San Jose, 12% was above list price from last year. So the expectations were up 12%. They should have been down 10%. Morgan Hill, down 13%. $1,496,000 was the number last year. $1,295,000 was the number this year. So again, despite the fact list price was up, you know what? Did I not do that? Yeah, actually that 34.8% number I was using for Morgan Hill is that number. Did I not update the percentages on that one? What a horrible sin I have committed if that is true. Okay, that's new listings. We've gone back too far. let's look at the original list price again here. I want to make sure that this is, all right, so all the numbers, the dollar values are correct, but the percentages didn't get updated. So I'm going to do that now. I apologize. Obviously doing this live isn't my optimal goal here. But original list price, almost right, 11% was what we had in Santa Clara County overall. So that's still close enough. 11%. It is 11. It's actually 10.9, but 11%. 12.5 for San Jose, higher than last time. And Morgan Hill was, yes. So these are all the numbers from last month. So meaning November. So 34.8. So 35% increase in expectations in Morgan Hill and a 3.2% drop in Gilroy. So I apologize. I did not translate over the percentages correctly on that one. But still in the same ballparks, but yes, a dramatic increase from Morgan Hill folks, where this month it was almost 35%, it was 34.8%. So again, these percentage numbers are incorrect. So verbally, I'm just letting you know that this number is actually 10.9. This one for San Jose is 12.5. This one for Morgan Hill is 34.8. And this one for Gilroy is 3.2. I apologize, but I'm glad I caught it so we can make sure to give you better data. And then in terms of average sales price, I want to make sure these are all correct. Yeah, I did my rounding, but yes, they are all correct. All right, so there we go. So we're good there. So in terms of average sales price, now in average sales price, these indicate where the markets have been and who's the most calibrated to reality, and clearly Gilroy is winning that there. Now let's go ahead and move on to percent over or under asking price. Now this one is a reflection of what the price was at the time the home accepted the offer. So before, when we were looking at list price, we were totally focused on what the mindset of the seller was. This is a peek into the mindset of buyers, because this is what they wrote in a contract to purchase a home at the time, what the price was at the time they wrote it. So it's not what the original list price was. It's what the list price on the day they looked at it. This is what the list price was. And then they made an offer based on that list price. So this reflects where buyers' heads are at. And in every case, the average result is that sellers are getting less than their asking price. In Santa Clara County, last year they were getting 108.8%, which equals 8.8% over asking on average. Now we're getting 98.8% in Santa Clara on average, which obviously is 1.2% below asking price. So a relatively significant number, particularly with the dollar amounts we're talking about. It's a good chunk of change. In San Jose, 109.3% was last year's number in December, was 2021's number. 109.3, so again, 9.3% over list price at the time that the list price at the time the offer was made. And that number this year in 2022 is 98.6%. So again, 1.4% decline. Morgan Hill with the biggest drop. And I think this is an interesting number to think about because it reflects the disconnect that we're seeing, right, between original list price, which is at 34%, and then the reality of the situation in terms of average sales price being down 13.4%. So the net is the solution to that difference in perception versus reality is this more dramatic drop in terms of what you're getting relating to your list price. So last year was 105.5%. So you're getting 5.5% over asking price on average in Morgan Hill. In December of 2022, that dropped to 94.7, which is a 5.3% drop. So that's a substantial drop in terms of what you're taking for your home. And given that reality, I think the explanation for that is absolutely clear. The reason is because expectations have been out of whack, and they've been getting forced back into alignment by this scenario, where buyers aren't just taking the number and going with it. They're saying, no, this is what we're going to offer, and sellers have had to take that. What's interesting is the pressure has built in Morgan Hill as we've seen the days on market increase. So we're also going to check that out and see where we're at in days on market. And I think my theory gets borne out when we look at that number. So we'll check that out next. In Gilroy, 104.7% was last year's number, so basically 4.7% over list price, and right now it's 97.2, so outperforming Morgan Hill. And again, they've been more calibrated to the realities, given what expectations were and what sales prices have actually been. So they're getting almost 3% below, 2.8% below asking price on average. Okay, let's go ahead and check out days on market. December. I had my fat sausage fingers typing December and put in too many E's. All right, let me just double check my numbers here and make sure that I have, and again, I did it again. I have no idea what's wrong with my brain. All of these numbers are correct, but the percentages are wrong, so I'll correct those as we go. Santa Clara County last year, in terms of days on market, it was 18. This year, it's 31. That is a 72% increase in terms of days on market. San Jose, 15 days on the market last year, 28 days this year, for an 87% increase in the total number of days on market. And Morgan Hill, last month's number was 227. This month's number is 26 days on the market last year, 48 this year, for an 84.6% increase. And in Gilroy, we saw a 185% increase. So an even bigger increase compared to last month. Yeah, it's actually kind of nice to be able to see last month, November's number, and then compare it to this month's, which is 186, really 185.7, which is 40 days. So 14 days versus 40 days. And again, I think this bears out what we were talking about a moment ago as to those days on market are playing a big part. Notice that the days on market, the actual number of 48 days, is the highest of these communities that we look at. It's higher than the county overall. It's higher than San Jose. It's higher than Gilroy. And those days on market are what are pushing sellers to being willing to take that 5% below asking price to get their home sold. Also probably acknowledging that with every day that they delay, they are potentially losing more money, as the amount they can get for the home tends to go down as the market proceeds into 2023. All right, next, let's take a look at price reductions. No, I'm sorry, not price reductions. We are looking at past months. Now we're looking right over our shoulder. So this is total active listings. And again, this is an opportunity for us to look back over our shoulder and just see what the trends are. And we can see that the total number of active listings, the total number of homes on the market kind of bottomed out in December last year. And we are seeing it heading to that bottom out point this year, but at a higher point, which makes sense, right? Because we're seeing an accumulation of inventory. We tend to see inventory go down in wintertime as homes get taken off of the market, as folks live through Thanksgiving and Christmas and really don't want to market their home in the winter months because they don't want people tracking mud through the house. They want to be able to have that holiday time for family without being interrupted. And then we can see that we really do peak at the typical time, right? It is no mystery why we peak in June, July. Right? That's when the highest activity is happening. That's when folks are looking, and that's when sellers really want to make things happen, particularly if you have a family with children who go to school. That's when those things are on pause so that you can then take care of that moving without having to deal with school problems. Next, you can see new listings are just dropping like a stone right along with total active listings. Next, look at that. We see the crossover between new listings declining and homes sold. So we've got finally a month, and look at how long it's been since we have sold as many homes as we listed. And that's why I called that out on the previous slide. Really, ever since January of 2022, we have been listing far more homes than we've been selling, right? So look at the gray line versus the green line. As long as that gray line is below the green line, you're accumulating inventory. So we have finally had a month where that is not happening for the county overall. That's a relatively good trend, but I'm not sure it's something we can sustain. But it's also interesting that this is happening in December, when you tend to see a decline in the amount of activity. This indicates obviously there's still buyers out there, But at least we're seeing a scenario where a good sign of the market is happening in terms of selling more homes that were actually listed in that particular month. So that's a good number to see. Next, Santa Clara County list price versus sales price. So here we are, average list price and the sales price. We can see we've had the sales price below the original list price for a while, pretty much since July. And we've had some other months where things went a little bit nuts. Those crazy high blips for Santa Clara County are typically months where the real estate agent added a zero by accident to the list price when they listed it. So when I pull original list price, it pulls whatever that number was first. So even if they change that number 5 minutes later, it still is reflected as a super large change. Now, as of about a year ago, so about December of 2021, I now go in and manually review a lot of these numbers and correct for that kind of stuff. So you won't see it happening as we move forward. But just so you're aware of why there's these crazy blips in terms of original list price. But as I mentioned, we've definitely been below list price in terms of where sales price is happening now for a few months. And it looks like they're diverging, which is also interesting. The average sales price is going down more than the average list price. And that is a measure of the disconnect that we've been talking about between expectations and reality in the market. The more those two diverge from each other, the more sellers in those markets need to understand what's happening and potentially adjust. Because if they don't catch on quick, every day they delay, they're losing a certain amount of money, right? Okay. Santa Clara County percent of asking price. And this is one where the trend is no mystery. I do have the trend lined in there so you can kind of see what it's doing. But we peaked in March of 2022. What a surprise that we peaked in March of 2022, right? When did interest rates start to go nuts? Where we hit 115.3%. So the average home in Santa Clara County was selling for 15.3% over asking price. Ridiculous, right? And these are the days when you were getting 25 offers on a home and people were spending offering hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price just to get into them. And I tell you, in a lot of these cases over the last couple of years, I've felt like I need to talk buyers down from the ledge of jumping on some of these properties to just end the process of trying to buy. I feel sorry for folks who bought during that period of time that paid a 15% premium over list price to get into that house. I think it's going to be I hope they plan on staying there for a long time because I think it's going to be a while before they get to the point where the market supports that value. Anyone who did that would now have to sell for far below what they paid for it, which is a dirty, rotten shame. So if we take a look, 98.8 is what we're at now. 99.6 was last month, but the trend, unmistakable, continuing to decline. It wouldn't surprise me if it continues to do this. We'll see what happens with interest rates. Interest rates have headed in an interesting direction in terms of hopefully encouraging more folks to buy. And that may be one of the contributing factors on why we saw the number of homes sold suddenly increase over the number of homes listed. We'll see if it remains a trend. And since it happened in December, remember that sold data in terms of what a home sold for actually reflects the month before, right? Because you make an offer in November and then it closes in December and it's counted as a sale in December. So the offer, the contract, the numbers, the locking of interest rates on that purchase happened in November. And November interest rates were not in a good place. So that really can't reflect this more recent change we've seen in interest rates. So it's got to be something else in that case. All right. Let us look at days on market. And again, in my world, anything really below 15, 16 days is an artificial number. It's a number that was defined by real estate agents simply saying, we're not going to consider any offers until such and such a date. I was doing this. Every agent did this. And if you were doing your job right, you did it. Because the bottom line is, you don't want to just take that first offer. You want to give everyone, particularly when the market was where it was, where there's tons of folks out there looking, you want to make sure you give enough time for everyone to get a chance to look at it, come together with an offer, and frankly, build the frenzy. As because if you were a buyer during any of these times, you know you were having conversations with them about, do you have any idea how many offers are coming in? Are we one of 10, one of 2, one of 20? Can you calibrate as to how crazy it is? And during those conversations, the frenzy gets fed. So buyers start thinking, well, how are they going to handle multiple offers? Are they just going to take whatever the highest offer is? Or do we need to come in with highest and best right out of the chute in order to get the best possible chance of getting the home? So that dynamic is absolutely there. It does nothing but help the seller's scenario when you allow a little time to burn. I can't tell you the number of times where I did this and a buyer would submit an offer and they'd submit it with 2 or 3 days left until they were due. And I'd get another updated offer that was for a whole bunch more money because the buyers were starting to panic, or the buyers had been looking at other properties and had gotten frustrated and were finding themselves getting bid out in all these other areas and were wanting to boost it to as high as they possibly could. So that's the way things were. Today, any number over about that, anything over about 20 is a real number. It's a number reflected by actual market influences, not real estate agents saying, we're going to wait till such and such a date. So here we are. We are at almost 32 days, about 30 days. In my world, at least when I'm thinking about it, and I'd love to have a chat with other real estate agents about what vibe they get from this is. But I think 30 days has a psychological impact on sellers. If they get to 30 days and they haven't gotten an offer, I think something turns, particularly if these are sellers who have been holding steady on their asking price. Now, this also assumes, and I want to give a kind of a little off the cuff suggestion to anybody who is trying to sell their home or is considering selling their home. You should never get to 30 days with your home on the market without having had at least 2 very serious conversations on why your home hasn't sold. I am a firm believer that once you deliver your listing to the world, and I go to a lot of trouble to make sure all this stuff is synchronized. I do old school mailing, like snail mail with tickets, with stamps. I do that, and I make sure that my mail material is hitting the market at nearly the same day as it gets released. So I usually will send out those postcards with enough lead time that I know that they will arrive at around the day it's going to show up on the MLS. I make sure my online advertising is kicking in at the same day. I make sure all the photos are ready for that property, all the virtual tours, everything. And I do a lot of customized marketing for properties that I list. So, and I have found over the years that generates a successful outcome. It tends to get my home sold faster if I hit everything with just this deluge of marketing right out of the chute, rather than doing this sort of like throw it on the MLS and see what happens kind of thing, which unfortunately tends to be a lot more common than people think. But I do a weekly analysis, right? I check how many views have I gotten on all the various outlets, how many views on Zillow, how many views on Trulia, how many views on Realtor.com, how many views on my website, how many views of the ads, how many views versus clicks to go to the details, how many of those folks who went to the details saved the home in part of their queue of homes they want to continue to look at. All of that is important data. And over the years, I've accumulated what I consider to be benchmark values for that. And if we're not within that benchmark range, we have a problem. And we need to have a conversation about it. I know in various markets, after X number of showings, if we haven't gotten an offer, we have a problem, right? And believe it or not, it is different for different markets. So if you get to week 2, at the very least, your agent should have a heart-to-heart with you on week 2. After your home's been on the market for 14 days, if you've had no showings in the first week, you should call your agent and say, hey, what's going on? Are we actually on the MLS or are we not on the MLS? Because we haven't had anybody come and look at the house. Those are all conversations you should be having earlier on and not waiting, because time is your enemy right now. For all of you folks trying to get your home sold, as more time passes, as reality is reflected in the market numbers that we're seeing, you are going to be losing money every single month that your home does not sell. So two things need to happen. You need to understand where you are priced in the market. And two, you need to make sure that if you do decide to reduce your price, you are priced correctly for what the market is right now, not what it was 2 weeks ago or a month ago. So you need to be in the right spot, or you're going to be constantly chasing that list price. And of course, if you miss it every time and you're just a little too high every time, ultimately when you do sell it, you're going to sell it for less than if you had acknowledged the right number at the beginning of the process. Okay? All right. So as of right now, we've got about, and I think we already covered this, days on market was at 31 in Santa Clara County. I think that's a magic number. The only city that wasn't at 30 or more was San Jose at 28 days. But again, I think that's close enough that the psychological impact, I think, is a big deal. Next, percent of list price listings with reduced prices. And the gray number is last month's number. The black number is this month's number, is December's number versus November's number. All right, so Santa Clara County, we've had decreases in all but Morgan Hill. And that's another interesting point I want to make. And it feeds what we've been talking about in terms of Morgan Hill in a lot of ways being poorly calibrated to what the market's doing. Let's go ahead and just run them down real quick. So Santa Clara County, 40.6% of homes had a reduced price in November. In December, it was 34.4%. So a reasonable amount of decline, but still a good chunk of listings had a price reduction. And again, when I do the specific video for Santa Clara County, San Jose, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy, each of those separate videos, I'm really going to get into more details on the numbers relating to this, because there's very interesting stuff in terms of understanding days on market, maximums, minimums, and averages of all of those numbers. San Jose, last month it was 42.2. This month it's 38.8. In Morgan Hill, the only community that saw a dramatic increase in this number. Last month it was 28.9. This month, 38.5. So almost a full 10% increase in the number of homes that saw a price reduction in Morgan Hill. And again, a reflection that the market needed to calibrate. It needed to adjust in order for things to get sold in that market. I think that's a good sign as more real estate agents either educate their sellers, or as more sellers have that, I don't know, light bulb moment, right, where they realize we really need to do something aggressive to adjust our price. The market comes into alignment, and then we'll start seeing people being able to get their homes sold in a way that gets them the best price at that time without delaying further. Gilroy, 36.2%. Last month, 34.2% this month. So basically a wash in Gilroy, again, because it's such a small sample size. I don't think there's any big conclusions we can draw from that, but it's about the same. And we saw Gilroy not that long ago, nearly half of their properties had price reductions. So they've actually throttled back from their peak, which I think was 49 point something, or maybe even 51 point something. But interesting numbers that we can get into more detail on in the videos that I'll be posting to YouTube and my website at soldbyrobert.com over the next week. I usually do them all and then release them day. So usually one on the first day, one on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday kind of situation. So feel free to check those out and be ready for those to be available very, very soon. Okay, that covers all of that stuff. Let's go ahead now and take a look at some stuff. This is a little something local, right? I thought I'd do a little local stuff here for us for Gilroy. I'm a fan of downtowns with character, and there's some interesting architecture downtown in Gilroy. And I think Gilroy has a lot of potential. Morgan Hill realized the potential of its downtown, and a decade or more ago started doing things to revitalize downtown. Now, they haven't always done things I thought made sense. I remember the debacle of getting rid of a lane for traffic in favor of bikes. That didn't work, and boy, did it piss off everybody in town. But they stepped back from that, so at least they responded correctly to it. They're making other areas in downtown Morgan Hill that are well suited to foot traffic, which is great because they're great locations to have some of the events that we do in Morgan Hill, whether it's the car show stuff or it's the musical stuff that we tend to do in July. Actually, all through summer, so it's not just July, but we have like musical things happening downtown. It's really nice. Morgan Hill has a beautiful downtown. It's really worth checking out. Again, another, we could over a cup of coffee or an adult beverage at some other time, we could chat about mistakes I think they've made. But overall, I think it's a beautiful location that has a lot to offer, and I would love to see Gilroy able to do the same thing. So that's starting to happen, and they've got the Jumpstart Downtown program campaign that's going to get underway in 2023. What was interesting here were some of the numbers. Now, I've spent a lot of time in downtown Gilroy, always during the daytime hours, and I have very rarely felt like I needed to worry. However, I'm also aware that there are some dicey things that go down in downtown Gilroy. But they did a bit of research. They did a survey, and let's see, what was it? Responders were downtown residents. They felt safe downtown going through a vehicle as well as walking from parking lots to shops. Bicyclists said they felt less safe, as did pedestrians walking from the Gilroy Transit Center. Only 20% said they feel safe from crime in downtown, according to the survey results. So only 20% felt okay about crime. 17% said they avoid the area at night, and nearly 40% said they feel safe before 6 p.m. So I get that. As someone who has spent a good chunk of time in Gilroy, I do not go to downtown Gilroy at night, and the whole vibe of downtown Gilroy changes at night. You get a lot of dudes hanging out on corners that you're wondering why they're there. They're not going anywhere. They're just hanging out on corners, which I think is probably feeds an awful lot of this. But it's good that there's some attention being paid to this. And I'm very happy with, say, Morgan Hill law enforcement, for instance. Our guys in Morgan Hill, they really tend to jump on this stuff when things happen. So things don't tend to go wrong for long in Morgan Hill in terms of how our police force responds. And I've actually worked with some police officers in Gilroy over the years in terms of helping them find homes. And they seem like a good bunch of dudes and dudettes, but it seems like something needs to happen perhaps in terms of headcount for them to get a better control on the downtown area and what goes on there in the nighttime hours of Gilroy. Next, big changes to mortgage costs were just announced. This is one that is supposed to happen this year. So this is obviously one that would affect everybody, at least if you're a buyer. It's supposed to take effect May 1st of 2023. So what are the changes? The effective penalty for having a credit score, and this is one that's double-edged, right? So we can chat about this a little bit. The effective penalty for having a credit score under 680 is now smaller than what it was. So they are making, and again, this is applying to any federally insured loan, and that's virtually all of them, right? Because a bank wants to be able to sell a loan that they have under. That's why all of you, when you buy a house, 2 months later, suddenly someone else tells you they're now the owner of your loan. This is about selling loans on the secondary market and being able to transfer liability for a default from Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Chase or whoever underwrites the loan to the government, to us, right? Through Fannie Mae, all these other organizations that are insuring the loans. And as long as they live up to certain standards, certain boxes they must check, they can do this. These banks can hand these things off and hand that liability off to someone else. And I don't think this is all good news. It's great news if you want to borrow it, but it's not great news if you don't want to encumber people who aren't financially ready to take on debt. When this happened in the 2006 to 2008 timeframe, I was not a fan because you were basically letting people borrow way more money than they could handle if a market turned around. And given where the market went then, and given where the market looks like it's going now, we're dealing with this same kind of a scenario here. Now, the effective penalty for having a credit score under 680 is now smaller than it was. It still costs more to have a lower score. For instance, if you have a score of 659 and are borrowing 75% of the home's value, you'll pay a fee of 1.5% of the loan balance, whereas you'd pay no fee if you had a 780 plus credit score. But before these changes, you would have paid a whopping 2.75% fee on a hypothetical $300K loan. That's a difference of $3,750 in closing costs. Now, I think that the old number made sense, and it would have encouraged people to borrow less. And for someone who maybe isn't really in a position to take on the debt that we're talking about, I think that makes total sense. I like the idea of someone being less encumbered. I always encourage my buyers, regardless of their situation, to not max out whatever they qualify for. They should try to keep that number very comfortable, so they're going to have some margin on a month-to-month basis with that loan. Elsewhere in the spectrum, things got worse. Borrowers with higher credit scores will generally be paying a bit more. So if you have a good credit score, if you have proven your credit worthiness, you're going to be paying a little bit more. The chart right here shows the differences. Green and yellow cells show where things have become more affordable than they were. Orange and red cells more expensive. So, I mean, that's kind of nuts. Right in this range, we're seeing an awful lot of folks paying more that I don't think should. And notice the greenest areas are the folks with the lowest credit scores. And credit scores need to mean something, right? I mean, a credit score is to be something that it reflects your credit worthiness or how much confidence someone should have that you're going to be able to pay back a loan. And why are these numbers going lower? And then why are folks up here with much better credit ratings, a much better proven record? Why are they paying so much more? It's a little bit ridiculous, and I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think we want to encourage these folks with higher credit ratings to borrow, or not penalize them for having higher credit ratings, versus the inverse, which is what they seem to be doing. Okay. Existing home sales receded 1.5% in December. Obviously, this is the national number. Existing home sales faded for the 11th straight month to a seasonally adjusted annual rate of 4.02 million. Sales waned 1.5% from November and 34% from a year ago. So clearly, they were talking that 1.5 is just in a month, right? And then 34% is what it's down from the previous year. The median existing home sale price climbed 2.3% from the previous year to $366,900. Existing home sales totaled $50.03 million in 2022, down 17.8% from 2021, as last year's rapidly escalating interest rate environment weighed on the residential real estate market. Next, national multifamily supply and demand at lowest level since 2009. And this is another one that I think is interesting because we've talked about house hacking, right? If you're a buyer, and I've had, over the last year and a half, probably one of the biggest things I've been doing is helping folks make their first purchase of a multifamily home, typically a duplex. I did help one person buy a quad, which is a fourplex, but my emphasis tends to be on multifamily that doesn't feel like multifamily, and this is the reason why. I've talked about this on my podcast. I've talked about this in past shows. You need your home that you're renting, your product you're putting out there, to be the most desirable of its type. And in terms of multifamily, what is the most desirable? The most desirable is the stuff that feels the least like multifamily. Nobody wants to live in an apartment. Nobody tends to enjoy the multifamily scenario, sharing walls with people. So those apartment complexes are going to be the first things to suffer. Those condos you're renting are going to be the first things to suffer. Renters are always going to prefer something that feels more like a single family residential home. And there are plenty of examples of particularly duplexes that feel like that, where you may share a wall. And we found one in Stockton, I think, last year, where there were no shared walls at all. There was like a weird little garden that went down the middle. So there were no shared walls. So it was basically two single family residential homes on the same lot as a duplex. And from the standpoint of living there, no, it felt like nothing at all. You had two driveways, so there was nothing you were sharing with your neighbor other than a landlord. So keeping an eye on that as you're going through, if you're someone who's interested in considering doing multifamily investing, and I continue to think that it's a good way to do it if you do it smartly. And if you're doing it in a way where you're trying to accentuate a single family residential experience in a duplex or a multifamily unit, you're much smarter, because these are the kinds of numbers that I like to avoid having an impact on my investments, or the investments of the folks that I'm helping. So I wanted to throw that one out there. National multifamily supply and demand both cooled to their lowest levels since 2009. Net absorption and new construction leveled off at just around 10,000 units in the fourth quarter, keeping the national multifamily vacancy rate flat at 4.4%. Total construction delivery and net absorption only reached 100,470 and 135,472 units for the year, respectively, the weakest record over the past decade. And boy, in our local area, if we're trying to translate this, think about all those rental units, those just packed in like sardine apartments that hug the 85 freeway. If you're going along the 85 freeway at the south end of it before it hits the 101, tons of giant apartment complexes where you are just crammed in there. Those are the first places renters are going to leave as they can find other accommodations that are more single family like. So we'll see how that goes. This particular reality has not impacted our local market too strongly yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if it does, and we'll see how that goes over the next year. Next, framing lumber prices are down. I like to share this one because it tends to be a leading indicator of what may happen with construction. But we had crazy lumber prices for a while. So year over year, it makes sense that we're down 67%. You can see the chart here reflects that we're basically the crazy peak there in terms of framing lumber prices. And we're now back down to a more reasonable level. So this is going to reflect a whole bunch of things. It's going to reflect remodeling. It's going to affect new home construction. So this is all good things. Lumber was at $374 per 1,000 board feet on January 3rd. This is down from a peak of $1,733 and down 67% from $1,148 a year ago. Prices are slightly below the pre-pandemic levels of around $400. So that's all good news. It may encourage more home builders to jump in since the cost of resources has dropped. But again, a huge player in that one is going to be demand, and demand is fairly light. Okay. Wanted to go ahead and share this one. Rents continue to decline more than seasonally normal. And I think this plays into, remember, this is just rents across the board. And obviously, apartment complexes and very apartment feeling multis are all going to be playing a part in this as more people want to step away from those types of things. And again, this is a national number. Locally, we are not quite seeing this yet, but again, it wouldn't surprise me if we do. So if you are a landlord, or if you're thinking of becoming a landlord, you may want to really build a better buffer into your purchase. For instance, when you're looking at a multifamily to buy, or even a single family residential home to buy as an investment, you want to build, I don't think you want to assume that you're going to be able to charge higher rents in coming months. I think you need to budget for either the same rent that's happening right now, or even potentially giving yourself enough buffer that you could drop rents by a certain amount without taking a hit, without being in the red, right? Next, collecting taxes. This is a good one. This is from the Pacific Legal Foundation. I love these guys. I've brought them up on this show and the podcast a bunch of times in the past. Let me just give you the quick version of this. If you owe taxes and the property gets liquidated, the government just keeps the whole nut. They keep the whole amount of money. So in many cases, they're paying themselves what you owe them plus all the other money. And it's ridiculous. It is theft, and it shouldn't be happening. In 2015, officials in Hennepin County seized an elderly woman's condo and sold it over about $2,300 of unpaid property taxes plus $12,700 in penalties, interest, and fees. They sold that home for $40,000 and kept every penny, robbing her of all of her equity. Does that seem fair? It shouldn't, because it isn't. And that's just one example. From 2014 through 2021, local governments in Minnesota seized and sold at least 1,350 Minnesota homes. The lost savings amounted to an average of $155,000 per home, or 90% of the home's value. Minnesota is one of 12 states, plus the District of Columbia, still allowing these abusive and unconstitutional tax and take seizures. But this is one of those scenarios where it's being fought, and hopefully this kind of stuff will stop. It's amazing to me that this is illegal, that it's legal anywhere. All right, landlords of Alameda County housing eviction ban stole one couple's American dream. Now, I've talked with folks before. We've had a few interactions relating to this topic where the moratorium, right, the COVID moratorium on being able to evict people, and folks were talking about how oh, well, hey, these landlords are still being taken care of. And the reality is they're not. In Alameda County, California, a pandemic era eviction ban. And remember, Alameda County is the last place where we discussed this because they extended the period where landlords could not get paid their rent. And again, something I consider to be an overstep. Pandemic era eviction ban has been in place for almost 3 years, even though COVID no longer poses the same threat it once did. As a result, mom and pop, and these are the folks I talk about all the time because so many of these folks rely on these properties for their retirement support. These are folks who bought a home, lived in it, decided to, and managed to make enough money to buy a home somewhere else and keep the home they had. And this was supposed to be a major contributor to their retirement living. And they're doing this month to month, check to check. So when they don't get paid, it's a substantial impact on their financial situation. These are not mustache twirling guys wearing monocles and top hats that own thousands of homes trying to squeeze every penny out of you. In fact, the average mom and pop landlord I talk to are charging below market rate rents. So these are folks who are not only contributing to the availability of rental homes, but these are folks who are tending to offer homes to folks at a rent that is more reasonable than what they would get elsewhere. Okay. As a result, mom and pop landlords have found themselves losing their livelihoods and dealing with problematic and sometimes violent tenants with no way to get rid of them and with little sympathy or support from their local government. This is part 2 of a series. Again, the Pacific Legal Foundation is fighting this one. The rental property also contained a studio apartment. A childhood friend reached out to Carl and asked if he would rent the unit to a friend in need of a place to stay until he got back on his feet. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary and would provide the couple with an additional $1,000 per month. Without any logical reason to turn down the additional stream of income, the Rogerses agreed, and their new tenant, Ryan, moved into the unit. So 2 things. One, yeah, the fact that this is happening and they can't get support from the local government to get this person out of the property. But number 2, delegating the responsibility for filtering your tenants to a current tenant is a super bad idea. You need to do the background check. And also, this is another one of those areas where it's illegal to use criminal background as a reason to deny someone an opportunity to rent one of your properties. The idea that any government should be able to tell you what criteria you do or don't use is a little bit shocking to me. Obviously you don't want someone who's doing racial profiling or those kinds of things. But if someone has a criminal record, it should be the discretion of the landlord whether or not they feel comfortable renting to that person. Let's see, the couple studio rental was one below the assisted living unit, and it didn't take long for proximity to become a problem. The couple began receiving reports that Ryan had been offering drugs to other tenants, ranging in severity from cannabis to meth. Now, we're also in one of those scenarios where, in many cases, if you are a landlord and this is happening on your property, you can have your property seized if this is happening on your property. So that would be bad. It got worse. As the days went on, Ryan became hostile, increasingly more belligerent, threatening the tenants and the house manager who lived there. At one point, Ryan pulled out a gun and started waving it in the air while screaming obscenities at the house manager, who just so happened to capture the incident on camera and alerted the police. But that didn't put a stop to the erratic behavior. This contentious situation came to a boiling point when Ryan beat one of the residents with a crowbar, resulting in his arrest and a restraining order. With the assault now on record and the couple at wit's end, they began the eviction process in 2019. Ryan was furious. Whenever he saw the Rogerses, he would get right in their faces, hurling spine-shivering threats. He once warned, "Keep on pushing this eviction thing, and you're going to find yourself 6 feet under." At one point, Shanna's brother was on the property and heard Ryan on the phone telling the other caller, "Oh yes, they think I'm playing with them. I've killed people before. I will hurt them." Talk about just yikes, right? I mean, this is what, and so I'm not trying to tell you a horror story to scare you off from becoming a landlord, but what I am saying is never bypass the process of screening your tenants. I don't care if the person you trust most in the world has said, go ahead and rent to this guy. He's having a tough time and he needs a place to stay. Don't just do that. Make that person fill out a form to become a tenant and go through the full background check. This is not a guy who just started doing this when he moved into this place. This is a guy who's been doing this kind of crazy crap probably for most of his life. And if you were aware of it ahead of time, you could have simply said no thank you and moved on to someone else. With nothing to lose and no intention to leave, he stopped paying rent altogether. The legal back and forth between the two parties dragged on until an agreement was finally reached in the beginning of February 2020. Ryan promised to vacate the property by April 1st. There was a light at the end of the tunnel now that the Rogerses were just 2 weeks away from the end of this hellish ordeal. And then the pandemic came. Rogers had no idea in February 2020 how the world would change over the short period of a month. By the second week of March, the country was on lockdown and governments of all sizes began passing emergency measures. In Alameda County, one of the first orders of business was to ban landlords from evicting tenants for any reason, which is dumb, right? When you have a violent person threatening people, brandishing a gun, threatening to kill people, that's a reason to evict somebody regardless of what's going on. On the one hand, the county's actions were at the very least understandable. Widespread COVID closures had put many people out of work, indefinitely making it harder to pay rent each month. This was not the time to throw people out into the streets. On the other hand, the ban was not just protecting people with legitimate financial challenges. The eviction moratorium applied to everyone, even tenants who posed serious safety concerns. Yet, at the same time, the government is not allowed to strip individual property owners of their rights. The Constitution forbids it. But in the 11th hour, Ryan was given a reprieve from his eviction at the Rogers' expense. So you can go ahead and read more of this. We don't need to read the whole thing. But the thing is this ban has just been continued. And these are folks who are simply expected to carry the burden. And I don't, that's not fair. And it shouldn't be happening. And it's right here in our own backyard. It's just to the north, the folks in Alameda County at large. And also Oakland even has some more specific stuff. So the county of Alameda and then Oakland in general is just a horrible place to be a landlord if you're trying to make things work. All right, next. I thought I'd throw this one out there. This is the biggest price increases in houses in any state in the past year. Florida is at the top. What I find interesting is California is not in the top 10. So just let your head wrap around that for a second. Florida is number 2, South Carolina, and both of those came to almost 20%. Vermont, 17%. Tennessee, 16%. And we've talked about Tennessee. If you're a listener to the podcast, Tennessee is one of my favorite places in terms of investments, or at least it was. I've talked about Chattanooga, Tennessee, a bunch of different areas. So if you'd taken my advice, if I had taken my advice and bought an investment property in Tennessee, you would have enjoyed this top 5 level of appreciation in what the houses are selling for there. Now, North Carolina was next. Georgia at 14.7%. South Dakota, Montana is one we've talked about in recent years on the podcast. Alabama, New Mexico, Arkansas, Oklahoma, tying for 9th and 10th place. Let's see where California is. There it is. California, number 40 on the list at 4.4%. What's interesting about Idaho is it used to be in the top 10. Right? Or no, yeah, Idaho. We were talking about Idaho not long ago. Again, I was talking about it before it had its big peak, but Idaho was one of those ones that was really going gangbusters. And it's another one of those communities where expectations are completely out of whack versus what's really going on. I actually took a couple of trips to Idaho and looked at investment properties. Right now, this is a market that's going to be declining. It wouldn't surprise me if in a few months this is a negative number where prices are going down just because it got so bloated for so long because there were so many people going there. I had several clients who left this area and moved there. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. This is the last thing I wanted to cover. We're 6 minutes past 11, so thank you for sticking with. I wanted to cover interest rates, so I thought what I would do is pick the average price for a home in Morgan Hill, which is $1.3 million. Assume you're putting down 20%, which in this case would be $260,000. Going through a 30-year fixed and that your credit score is an excellent 760 or higher. What would you be paying right now if you decided to try and get one of these loans? The best option for you with the lowest monthly payment is from PenFed Credit Union. $5,743 a month would be your mortgage payment. 5.339 would be the APR. And your fees would be over $10,000. Just all of that kind of mind-blowing, particularly since last year is still so fresh in my mind of what folks were paying for loans. But to realize that folks might have to come up with basically $6,000 a month, not including property taxes. Property taxes on that, about $1,000 a month. So $7,000 a month between property taxes, mortgage payment, insurance. You're probably talking $7,000 a month. So that's just crazy. And that explains why we're seeing such a decline in the number of folks out there buying, because it's nuts. All right. I feel like we've covered some good stuff here today, folks. If you have any questions or suggestions or topics you'd like covered, because remember, I also do the podcast. I'm always looking for great topics to do on the podcast, which is going to be the next podcast is going to come out Monday. And then, as I said, the rest of the days of the week, one day a week, we'll get a new market analysis video for one of the communities that we covered here today. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can find me at soldbyrobert.com. On that site, you're going to find great tools for buyers and sellers. If you're a seller, we've got the request form for you to get a competitive market analysis that's done by me using my 30 years of experience to give you the best estimate of your home's value possible. But if you don't want to talk to me, you don't want to talk to a real estate agent, believe me, I understand. I hate talking to real estate agents. You can use my automated tool. You just enter the address. It'll automatically throw a value at you. I think it's a good tool. It'll give you a ballpark number, but remember that these online estimation tools are less and less accurate because they rely on data that's, because of the way the market's going, more out of date. They're already inaccurate to begin with, but given the way the market's shifting, they're going to be a little bit more inaccurate. So assume that there's a plus or minus $100,000 to $200,000 window of error potentially on any tools. And I don't care which one you're using, whether it's the Zillow tool or my tool or someone else's tool. They're all frequently taking this data from the same place. If you're a buyer, I've got some great search tools. Let me make a suggestion if you're a buyer. So yes, you can go right to my site and start your search. But I have a tool I'm using that unfortunately I can't front end on my website. I like it because it lets you say, I love this place is okay, or I hate this place. None of the other tools let you do it. And it also lets you write notes about it. And it also lets us write notes back to each other. So if you're a buyer who's interested in starting your home search, if you contact me directly, I can set it up for you. And once it's set up, we can then communicate back and forth through the web interface. But it's just something I can't integrate into my website. It's something that has to stand completely separate. I've talked to the provider of this tool, and they don't have a way for me to do it. But it is the single best tool I've ever used. There is one other company that makes a tool that does the same thing, but they don't serve California yet. So I'm on their wait list to get that tool integrated into my website. Well, no matter what you need, head on over to Sold by Robert. I'd be happy to help you out. As always, I hope I left more knowledge on the table than I've taken up in your time. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you all next time on Coffee and Real Estate.